Good evening, everyone. My name is Beverly Stoddard, and tonight we are going to have a wonderful conversation with some really bright people about journalism and what's going on in the State House. My name again is Beverly Stoddard, and behind the scenes we've got Montana West, who is our IT expert, and thank you, Montana, for being so good. As well as we have Bob Charest, the Board of Directors President of InDepthNH.org, and he will also help on the second half hour of this evening's event by fielding questions that we are asking that anyone that has a question to please go into the chat. We promise to answer every question. If we can't get to you in person tonight, we'll ask you to put your name, your email, and your question in the chat so that we can then answer them. We promise to answer all of them. We're going to have a fun event tonight, though. And what I'd like to start with, on Monday, just 2 days ago, Nancy said, let's have an event on Wednesday. And I'm thinking, you mean like Wednesday Christmas a week from now? And no, she said, no, we're having a Wednesday. And you know what? We don't turn things down around here. We go for it. That's how you deal with nonprofit anything, nonprofit news, whatever. And so 2 days later, we figure we're going to have 3 people. We'll have a little Zoom, we'll have 3 people. And tonight we've already got 108 people signed up for this event tonight in a simple, and so if you ever think it's too late or it's Christmas, don't think that way. Go for what you're planning because it's going to turn out just fine. We've got a great agenda for you tonight. We have wonderful speakers that each one will speak about 8 minutes. And then around 6 o'clock, we want to move into the question portion of the evening. And what we're asking is that you put all of your questions into the chat, and they will then, we'll answer them as they come up in the second half hour. And again, if you don't get your question answered tonight, just follow through with the chat, your email, and your question so we can follow through. And so we're going to start tonight with our first speaker tonight is Garry Rayno. And Garry Rayno is the preeminent State House reporter in New Hampshire. And if you remember the outlier book that said you had to have 10,000 hours of experience to be an expert, this fella here has probably got 40,000 hours of experience dealing with the State House. And what I imagine is he's got this building full of people with questions and answers and dialogue going on that he so capably filters down into the article that he's writing that is truthful, objective, and gives you the answers that you're looking for. And that's the promise of what we're doing here at In-Depth New Hampshire. Also here tonight is the wonderful Paula Tracy. She's amazing, award-winning Paula Tracy, and so is Garry. And you know what Nancy always says about Paula is she wants to go to the executive council. She wants to be there. She wants to be where the story is. And if you've ever been in that room, there's probably 20 chairs, and Paula is in that room. She's hearing these people. She's hearing their voices, seeing their expressions, seeing how they're carrying on among each other. And so that's what you want in a reporter, to witness and then report on what she's seen. Again, objectively, truthfully. And that's what Paula also does. And finally, we're going to have Nancy West, our publisher, editor, the creator of In-Depth New Hampshire. And this is a woman who said, I'm going to start a nonprofit news website, and this was just, all right, all by myself. And then she's going to gather resources all by herself. She'd retired.
Okay, and I just asked everybody, what were we thinking?
What were we thinking? Yeah, exactly. But we're going now is next September, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. 10 years later, next September, and you folks are all invited to the party. It's a live party. We're not doing a Zoom in September next year. So put that down on your calendar. So with that said, I would like to begin the questioning with Garry Rayno. Garry, please tell us, what's your crystal ball saying about the 2025 State House shenanigans, shall we say? And welcome also.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight as we look forward to another legislative session, one that has Republicans firmly in control of the state government. 30 years ago, Republicans had long controlled state government until Gene Shaheen and other Democrats helped to make New Hampshire a two-party state in the latter part of the 20th century. What those old Republicans did not want to do was make significant changes in the way we live and how government operates. After all, it was theirs. The ones in power today want to change in New Hampshire into their own image as champions of individual rights and free markets. And that desire is being fueled by millions of dollars of outside dark money and a national agenda. When I first covered the State House, we often heard legislators say, with pride, we are not Washington, meaning Republicans and Democrats could come together when required, work together for the good of the state and not succumb to partisan bickering. That's not true anymore. One of the biggest reasons is the U.S. Supreme Court's Citizens United decision, allowing more and more dark or anonymous contributors' money to flow into the national politics and also into the state political races and lobbying efforts, such as the Koch Foundation's Americans for Prosperity and various other nonprofit dark money organizations that have spent millions on campaigns and lobbying efforts, such as the Education Freedom Accounts. The significant money is expended, there is an expected return, making the stakes higher and the pressure greater to make Concord much more partisan and, dare I say, much friendlier across the aisles to the general public. Over the last 2 terms, lawmakers have extended their reach all the way down to public school classroom curriculum, telling educators what they can and particularly what they cannot teach in their classroom over things like the straw man, political race theory. They want teachers to be surveillance agents of their children, and do anything less is a violation of their parental rights. But the same people pushing parental rights are willful supporters of changes to the state's minimum standards and curriculum guidelines that could allow poor school districts to shortchange students if the districts cannot afford to provide an adequate education. The upcoming session will give lawmakers an opportunity to change the education funding system, to bring it more in line with the 2 Superior Court rulings a year ago, declaring the current system unconstitutional, inequitable, and the state's contribution way too meager to meet the state Supreme Court's Claremont decisions 3 decades ago. Bills to change the system are numerous, but it remains to be seen if they received any more action than the ones introduced last session, which all fell by the wayside. And there is one bill introduced that impeached the judge who wrote those decisions, something you would never have seen in the past. Chief Justice David Brock was impeached before a century ago. Some thought for the writing the decisions in the Claremont case, but what it really was for was for failing to rein in the Associate Justice Stephen Thayer, who was trying to influence his pending divorce proceedings. Another example of expanding their reach are zoning ordinances and planning regulations, which have traditionally been left to local control, the town's residents deciding the character of their communities. Lawmakers today have tried to override that principle and prevent cities and towns from becoming overly restrictive, and they will try again in the upcoming session, all based on a report written by the founder of the Free State Project, Jason Sorens, in the name of property rights. However,
Gary, could you just speak up just a little bit for us, please?
Yeah. All these issues will pale in the face of the hurricane-force winds, driving a budget crisis legislators must navigate by July 1. Since the Great Recession at the turn of the century, New Hampshire has lived a charmed life, physically with the exception of the first year of the COVID pandemic and revenue spiked. State revenues began running large surpluses back when Maggie Hassan was there. have not really stopped until this fiscal year. It is not the norm to have that long a run of strong revenue. In response, Republicans cut business taxes, and in 2 weeks, the interest and dividends tax will be repealed, a levy that produced $185 million last fiscal year. Cuts to business tax rates have been projected to cost the state about $750 million over the last 10 years. And now the rooster is coming home to roost as the federal COVID relief and rescue money that filled the state's coffers is drying up, along with the interest the state earned on it and its large surpluses the past year. In that respect, Chris Sununu has been one of the luckiest governors in state history, while his successor, Kelly Ayotte, and her Republican colleagues will be searching for miracles to produce a balanced budget for the next 2 years that neither cuts essential services nor raises taxes. One former budget writer emailed after my column last week. He told me the gap between revenues and spending is likely to be $1 billion. That is $500 million, I thought, roughly, as opposed to $500 million, I thought. The last time a gap like that confronted budget writers, they slashed state aid in half to the university and community college system. And they kept the Medicaid enhancement tax money that should have been returned to the hospitals under the Metascan arrangement. It will be interesting to see how the budget impacts some of the Republicans' priorities, such as making the voucher program for the Education Freedom Account universal, so that there is no salary cap for parents. Removing any earnings cap could cost the state about $100 million a year, up from $28 million this year. And that would wipe out the more than $200 million surplus in the Education Trust Fund in a couple of years. That trust fund divides the bulk of the state aid to public schools and to charter schools. Will a budget crisis force Republicans to maintain a salary cap for the vouchers? If other states are any indication, that will not stop the push for universal vouchers for everyone. Arizona's universal voucher system is bankrupt in that state, while providing state-paid tuition subsidies to the wealthy parents whose kids were already in private or religious schools at the parents' expense. And that is likely to occur here for salary cap as well. About $5,000 a year, the average state grant, is not going to allow a middle class or a poor family student to attend St. Paul's or Phillips Exeter or Kimball Union or Holderness. It is mere pocket change to those at the top of the earning pyramid. It is your tax dollars. Lawmakers have also promised to put $75 million a year into the YDC settlement fund for the victims of sexual and physical abuse at the hands of state workers within their youth services center. They also committed to setting aside about $50 million a year for a new men's prison, projected to cost between $450 to $500 million to replace the decaying pocket facility.
Gary, you've got about a minute.
And the largest elephant in the room is education funding, which could be even more costly to state coffers than others if there is a real attempt at a permanent solution. Earlier this year, Sununu asked department heads to present a budget with a 4% cut, but some budget writers believe a 6% cut is really what is needed for the upcoming year. Going from budgets that largely gave departments most of what they sought to a 6% cut, it's going to be very painful for those who depend on state revenues to survive, and for state employees who likely will be laid off. The budget crisis will make fights over right-to-work legislation seem tame, although it is the best opportunity to pass in my lifetime with the Republicans in this session, as they try to turn New Hampshire into Florida or Texas north. Attempts to interfere in the decisions of young adults and their sexual identity. It also follows the lead of Texas and Florida, as with greater restrictions on abortion rights. something Republicans leaders say they want to protect. But will they stand up by that position that looks like a close vote? It's going to be a wild year. So I suggest you buy a hard hat and keep your head down.
A wild
Keep your eye on the property tax because it is bound to go up. It always does. The money is hard to find in county and cost shifting. So thank you. And I'll be happy to answer questions after calls.
Thank
Oh,
you so
thank
much,
you.
Gary. That was great. We have a request of perhaps if you have those, if you could send those in writing to us so we can get them published as well. That would be great. I think we need to get a recap of all of this. So, but let's move on to Paula Tracy, who you heard what Gary said. How would you like to continue with this conversation, Paula?
I would love to just sort of introduce myself if you don't already know me. How's my volume? Can you hear me?
It's great. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just back from a long day at the State House. Actually, I began at 8 o'clock this morning at the Bridges House with all the State Department heads gathering for what was the last Executive Council meeting of the past 2 years. It's ending with Cindy Warmington and Ted Gatsis and Chris Sununu all leaving. The new council to be sworn in on the June 9th, January. We had a robust conversation today about Hampstead Hospital, and they were on a 4-to-1 vote willing to allow for the contract to go forward, which will basically lease the new facility to the state for mental health care for all our children to Dartmouth Hitchcock, Mary Hitchcock Hospital, Dartmouth Health. And it was what the governor had considered his most important and final contract of his experience. And I covered also after the meeting the governor's final press conference with us as reporters. He went on for an hour and a half about, we discussed a little bit about his legacy, the issues that the state still faces. And I'll be working in the coming days on developing a story based on some of the things that he had to say about that. Another thing that happened today was, and I got to reconnect with Kelly Ayotte, and she's the governor-elect. And I've known her since she was an assistant attorney general covering the Zantop homicides at Dartmouth College. And she was brand new. I was there with her when she was attorney general at the executive council meetings for many years. And have now, and then she went on to the U.S. Senate. And now it's come full circle. She's back again. She was sitting in her old seat that she sat at as Attorney General next to John Formella, the Attorney General, pouring through notes with her new sort of right-hand person. Then she went off to have lunch with the Executive Council at T-Bones. I did not go to that because I was at the presser. But the season is just starting, as Gary told you. He is great about the budget, about understanding finances and things, and education funding, which are not my wheelhouse. I really have been a reporter doing a lot of stuff about environment, resources, the outdoors, which is things in the North Country, which are things that I'm very passionate and interested in. And so I've always gone to the State House curious about what is being discussed. And I'm looking forward to the public hearing process. And I'm hoping some of you who are watching and listening will participate in the process, which is yours, and reach out and say hello to me, because it's always nice to connect with people who understand what we're doing here at In-Depth. We're just trying to shine a light on what is out there and happening. Some of the things that I wanted to sort of go over, which are a little separate, is great because Gary has those important things in his wheelhouse that I don't quite understand. But I kind of cherry pick it at stories that I'm interested in. And some of the things that I've got on my little Christmas list here is stories. So one thing that I'm really curious about is carbon capture and carbon credit farms and the impact to not just the North Country, but 82% of the state landmass is forested. And there are large property owners that now have a new way to derive income, leaving their timber stands standing and entering carbon credit markets, where companies like, Amazon, who want to get to net zero in terms of their carbon footprint, or are required to by California law, they can basically get credit for not doing that and go into one of these things where they allow the trees to grow. The North Country is facing a bit of a crisis because the largest property in the state that's privately held is turned into a carbon credit farm. That is the northern, what is it called? The Connecticut Lakes Headwaters Tract, 146,000 acres. The catch on it, though, for the public is that there is a easement on the land that is held by the state and requires them to log. There is now a 10-year logging request that Aurora Sustainable Lands, the new owner, is hoping to get the state to agree to. But there's a lot of pushback, particularly from municipalities that are losing tax credits or timber tax revenue. And in this situation for Pittsburgh, that's 20% of their budget. So they are getting more support from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Other people are looking at that. And that's going to be an issue that I'm going to be particularly interested in getting into as the season wears on. There's a bill that would allow towns to recover money from such carbon credit farms for standing timber, which is a creative idea that may have some traction, but it's the live free or die state, and private property rights are a big issue. So it should be a really hot issue that nobody else is, there's so many stories out there. Not all of us can do everything, but that's one thing that I think is very important for us to be covering. I'm also interested to see what is going to happen with the Laconia State School property, the former Laconia State School property. There is a $10.5 million plan by the people who've developed Woodmont orchards in the southern part of the state to develop that property into housing and multi-use. That is still, they could walk away from it. It's not a totally done deal yet. It hasn't closed. There's a lot of due diligence. There's there's a lot of potential for the land, but there's also a lot of ways that they can get out of the situation. I think another issue that I'm kind of delving into is border security and tariffs with Canada. The Trump-elect administration is talking about a 25% tariff to Canada if border security isn't tightened. It's being used as a leverage tool, but it could have profound impacts on the economy of the North Country and the state in general. And there's a lot of nervousness as we look at our friends to the north who are trading partners of our highest order and what that might be. Also, landfill development and what is going to happen with state rules as it relates to the Forest Lake proposal in Dalton by Casella. This is something I haven't really reported on in the past, but I feel that it's very important. Tomorrow, there's an important vote on JLCAR, the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules and Regulations. I don't know what that is, but they are going to be asked to approve DES new rules that are controversial to those who feel that the new rules don't go far enough into protecting leachate from escaping the facility and entering the environment, which has a PFAS component to it, which is another area that we're going to see some legislation on. I spent the summer learning a lot about cyanobacteria and the threat that it poses to water and our golden goose, which is our state lakes. There's been some pushback about, whether it's a big issue or not. We'll see how it plays out, but I know there are a number of bills that are going to be aimed to helping lakes and communities plan and protect their water from this potential impact, because there's a lot of health impacts there. A wake surfing I think wake surfing is going to come back in terms of a bill that looks at erosion on lakes, and in terms of where you can do that and when. And then I don't doubt that we're going to see some cannabis legislation.
Hmm.
I think people are poo-pooing the possibility that because Ayotte has said that she would not support cannabis legalization with adult use in the state. But I think she's going to be coming, as Garry mentioned, we're going to have a financial crisis on our hands, and there's going to be a lot of areas where we're going to want to talk about where potential revenue sources, even though I'm sure she, but I do feel that that has not gone away. And if it's not this year, perhaps in the next, session, because of course, a lot of the focus is going to be on a budget. How am I doing for time, Bev?
You have probably 1 or 2 minutes, and then
Oh,
we'll get Nancy just a few minutes before we go questions.
okay. Couple of things that are of concern to me are ambulance costs and firefighter vacancy rates and municipalities and insurance. And I don't know if there's bills on that, but I've been talking with the insurance commissioner, and there's some real concern about how we're going to handle this, particularly in rural areas. And another thing that has really got me my attention through Executive Counselor Janet Stevens is these hospital mergers and impacts on our access to a hospital care because of these financial situations, and what teeth really New Hampshire has to hold these agreements together. So I feel there's going to be a total ton of stuff. Not to mention housing and childcare, which will be huge, huge issues. And although it depends on, I think there's going to be some difficulty with municipalities really have a lot of control over those things. I'm building an ADU, and I'm coming in the town of Center Harbor with a good experience personally, but I'm also looking at the costs and all this as it goes forward. And I sort of have an interest in seeing how we can develop um, more housing for people who really need a place to live and where we need them in our community. So I'm
Uh,
look, yeah, I'm looking
Other than
forward to the
that,
year.
Paula, what are you going to be doing with your time? I mean,
Ah,
I- you know, I
There's
mean,
no time.
this is why we want In-Depth New Hampshire doing what it's doing, just because everything Garry laid out and everything you've just laid out, if you folks weren't doing this, who's going to be doing this? Because it's so hard to keep local news alive. And we'll move into Nancy West. And Nancy, it's about 1 minute to 6. Can you keep it to like 3 or 4 minutes? And then we can get into some of these questions that have lined up.
oh, yes, I'll be very brief. As you can see from listening to Garry and Paula, I'm honored to be part of this journalistic experiment called InDepthNH.org. It's just amazing how many issues we're going to face this year. And they're all about money, money, money. And where's it going to come from? Is it going to come from, manna from heaven? Those federal dollars from COVID are gone. They have to be spent by the end of the year or else. And it's gonna, where does the money come when it doesn't come from the state? I just paid my tax bill the other day for half a year and cried a little bit writing the check, but like everybody, that's where we get hit very hard. And there aren't a lot of reporters left in the state of New Hampshire. We need every single reporter we can find. I was looking up some of the figures that I try to keep track of. In the year 2001, so what is that, like 25 years ago, we had 2,201 people working for newspaper publishers. That's 2020, that's 2,201. What we had in 2000 in last year, 2023, were 526 people. I mean, it's phenomenal. And I get these numbers from the Department of Employment Security. Now, those numbers probably don't count people like, the four or five reporters that we have in our InDepthNH.org and a few of the startup different online publications, but still that's a 75% drop in people working in the news business. So, I think anybody that goes to the State House can tell you there used to be a crowded room. It was hot and sweaty. And now it's not enough reporters. And I think most of the legislators will tell you that. Certainly, most readers will tell you that. And I'm just so proud that we've been able to stay up online publishing important stories that matter for almost 10 years. It's just amazing. The other day we started a thing called Friends of InDepthNH.org. And all you have to do to join is tell a couple of friends or not tell, you're not supposed to boss around your friends. Ask them nicely to please sign up for our free newsletter. And, just talk about us at the water cooler. I don't know if anybody still has a water cooler anymore. I still have a Rolodex, so I gotta go back a bit. That reminds me, Beverly Stoddard has a book. What was your book called about the Rolodex?
Stories from the Rolodex.
And it's
And
a
it's
really
about
good read.
reporters just like these folks. It's the good reporters that worked in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. And they did it before cell phones, internet, social media, the hard way. But it's still hard anyway, right, Big Gary? Right, Paula? It's a hard job.
Still the hard way. I got to get back to that 1 to 2 minutes. Ugh. We have a lot going on. We just started a second free newsletter, and it comes to your inbox at 5:45 in the morning. It's a friendlier approach to news. Sometimes the news can be really dreary, so we have some much lighter fare, sometimes a little just fun stuff, but we also put the main news stories in. And what I'm particularly happy about is what's happening in the world and the nation and local. It's all important. And in the next coming years, I think we're really going to need to know what's happening in Washington, D.C., what's happening in Moscow, what's happening in China. We certainly don't have the resources for that. And many of the news outlets, newspapers, the legacy newspapers, those used to be whole sections. Now they're a page or a page and a half. So in our morning newsletter, we will be linking to ProPublica, BBC, The Guardian for our international and national news. And it's time to just make a little bit of a change. We can't be all dreary news all the time, although I find it fun. We insist also at InDepthNH.org in having fun with the news, having fun in our work. It's important, and we have some new people coming on. We're Catherine Webster, who's formerly of AP. She's going to be doing some work for us. Next month, we're going to have an event very similar to this with Damian Fisher, our reporter who does a lot of investigative work. And actually, please put your name and address in, or just email it to us if you want to get our new advertising thing, it's called a bumper sticker. And it says, "Got news, InDepthNH.org." And please put it on your car, your laptop, your forehead, whatever. We got to get the word out that we have the best, as I like to tell people, we have probably roughly 1,000 years of experience between us, the reporters that we have. And
Most of it's with Nancy.
we have a lot. I have brought a lot there. And Damian Fisher, we have some wonderful columnists, and we really, I'm just amazed at what we are able to accomplish. Beverly Stoddard, Bob Shrest, many of us, as you can see, are
Okay, Nance.
expatriates of the union leader, where we learned our trades well. And
did.
I'm proud to have spent so many years there. We're hoping every newspaper thrives. We're at the end of our news match. This is our major fundraiser. So any dollar that anybody donates from now till December 31st will be matched dollar for dollar. We raised over $70,000 worth of matches. So please keep that in mind. We've got to build our business section and read the Good Morning New. It's not Good Morning. It's Good Morning New Hampshire news outlet.
And on that note, Nancy, I'm going to cut in here. Sorry, it's 6 yeah,
okay.
yeah. So,
We got great
okay.
questions. I've seen some coming up already.
Yeah, we've got good questions in. My computer is having a little issue. Bob, I just sent you a note to see if you can be ready in case my computer dies. But we'll start with LWV said, which politicians have you had the most trouble getting to interview, Garry, and why do you suppose that is?
I don't know. Over the years, most, particularly working in the State House, most of them are pretty cooperative. You know, there are some that are not so easy to deal with as others, but by and large, the whole thing has changed. I mean, you don't have quite the interaction you used to have with the politicians because they'd rather have press releases go out and not have you talk to so-and-so, but you know, you're down in the State House cafeteria and you run into them and you got to ask them the questions, you know.
You gotta.
You know, so
most have been cooperative then with you.
yeah, I mean, some are less cooperative. I mean, there's some governors who weren't always that willing to be a lot of access. I mean, you know, some of them were very, you know, you could just walk up to them and talk to them. Others were a little more standoffish.
Well, Anita Burrows is writing here that you're the best political reporter in New Hampshire and beyond. So you're doing something right, and we all agree with her. And Gregory Davis is asking, he's asking if we could get all of your remarks published. So I'll try and get everything transcribed from here tonight, and we'll put it in some kind of format.
I'll send you what I have.
Okay, all right. And then Paula, you came across pretty well, so we'll be able to transcribe what you have said also, and somehow we'll get that published. Nancy will figure that out. So here, InZane 12,000 is saying, if the court orders the legislature to come up with more money for education, will they do it or refuse? And what happens if they refuse?
Well, they've been refusing for 30 years, so I mean, it doesn't really. I mean, the court literally, you know, Ruoff's decision basically told them they had to up it up to about over $7,000 per student from $400,000, and you can see what they did in the last year, which was totally ignore it. And that's the way that they've been. I mean, they've ignored it since the original Claremont decisions in a big way, really.
When in doubt, do nothing. Is that what the policy is?
Or do as little as you possibly can.
Oh, okay, well, that's all right. That's
you know, and what we end up with is a constant run of lawsuits like we're seeing now. This is the latest round,
Mhm.
taking a state to court, and the courts usually have come down in favor of, their past decisions and what's been said, and the
Yeah,
lawmakers
yeah.
still don't seem to have a will to go out and make any big changes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And Paula, what you were talking about the carbon offsets and also the landfills, I just think are two incredibly important stories that are going on that those who want to protect the trees and those who want to protect the people that are in the communities. How do you win, or whoever wins in a fight like that?
Well, that's one of the wonderful things about the legislative process, that first you get an opportunity to hear all of the sides for people who care and come out and testify. And one of the things that New Hampshire really is known for is our roundtable approach to environmental issues. It's different, in New Hampshire, we sit around and argue and try to come to an agreement like we did on the forest plan for the White Mountain National Forest. Other states, they might go to court, like, in the example we are just talking about, education funding. But the process of finding a common ground, a middle line, is something that I really think is valued and part of the legislative experience, and also part of our culture, especially as it relates to nonpartisan issues, sort of, these kind of questions about, can we come to an agreement on, so I think
Right. Can we come to an agreement?
I
Will they
think we
be
can. I
reasonable?
think we
Yeah.
can find something that everybody can say, yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that, or reasonably. Nobody's going to be happy with everything, but I do believe that there's this collaborative, mutual respect, that New Hampshire is sort of known for, particularly in the environmental circles. So I'm
But
hopeful.
is there that same mutual respect that goes on with the landfills and what is it, Casellas, who wants
Casella
to
and
build?
no, Forest Lake, that is something I'm gonna have to really understand a little bit. I'm hearing from people who live in that area that there's been a lot of political influence that the company has been trying to exert on political leaders. But because there's a new governor, I think there's going to be a different, I'm hearing from um, Ayot a different story than Sununu on this whole thing, where she is basically saying, not on my watch. We
Right.
are not going to let a new facility go in here, and we are not going to take out of state trash. And we'll
Exactly.
see if she holds to it, but she definitely had run on it, and there are people who are expecting a different tone from the corner office.
She had a commercial about it. She stood in front
Oh,
of a
really?
lake, so we'll see what happens.
We'll
Um,
Well,
see.
I think
so
there was
Kim Marie Fudge is saying, I'm sorry, Nancy, did you want to say something?
yeah, I think there was a consensus reached in the last session and in a bill that would have protected Forest Lake. I believe that Governor Sununu vetoed it. So I think there was at least in the House and the Senate some powerful appreciation of the need for that. I believe the bill was written by Edith Tucker. Maybe it wasn't last session, maybe it was even before. But I do think there's a general awareness, much more in the last few years,
Mm,
about the need for legislation and oversight on what is happening with our landfills, with taking trash from out of state. And
good. Yeah. So Kim Marie Fudge is saying, we just got word the tax rate is going up by 13% in Conway. And you got a comment on that, Gary?
well, I'm not sure of exactly
Percent.
why that is exactly. But my point was, in the past, when we went into these periods where state funding is scarce, like that when I talked about on the last time we had this huge budget deficit they cut the university and community college systems in half, and they kept the Medicaid expansion money. But the other thing they did was stop paying 35% for municipal, county, and school employees that the state used to pay into the retirement system. It was a huge downshift to local communities. And that's the sort of same thing that you could look for in the coming year for the next budget, because you're going to be facing the same sort of issues.
So this is not a trickle that's coming down to us. This sounds a little bit more fluid, shall I say? We'll see what happens. Catherine O'Brien, where are the young journalists, Nancy? College graduates. Does UNH still have a major in journalism?
Actually, they stopped that program, and it's in some sort of remake, more towards the business of advertising, I believe. And that's really unfortunate. On the other hand, there are but very few jobs in this field. I taught a couple of years ago at the down at Boston University, this summer school for young kids that wanted to come into the college. They were high school kids wanting to become journalists. And one of them said to me, my mother really doesn't want me to take a journalism major because they're paid so low. And as everybody here can attest, the pay is very low, especially right now. We're hopefully going to build sustainable jobs, but it's hard to where are the jobs?
Where are the jobs?
75% of the jobs are gone.
Right.
We had a wonderful young woman, had just received her master's degree from Columbia University in journalism, and did a fabulous job for as long as she could stay, but she got hired by a wonderful, very prestigious magazine in New York City. People need to have jobs that are paying jobs. We are all contract workers at the InDepthNH.org because we don't have the funding to pay for real jobs. Although we do I encourage interns. We had a fabulous intern this semester. She just got finished. Her name was Morgan Massaro. Watch for her. She's going to be such a success. She developed our TikTok page. So InDepthNH.org has a fun TikTok page. That's where the young people are getting their news. We're very forward thinking. We want to go where the young people are too.
We do. We do.
We are an aging
Just don't look like it.
Yeah.
We just don't.
So don't worry. We're fine. We're fine. Let me just ask this. Cornelia Schneider is asking, is there a good place to learn what is happening in the State House? A schedule of what is being discussed in Concord?
Yes.
All of you can answer that, right? What is the answer to that?
Gencourt.gov. If you go online to gencourtnh.gov, I believe it is, you can go in and you can hit a button for the House and the Senate, and you will go to the calendar, and you will be able to look at, for a couple of weeks forward, where the bills are, who's hearing them, where the room is. And that will also connect you to, if you can't go down, to a link where you can watch it. That's one of the greatest tools that I use, and Garry does as well, to be able to just schedule and see what bills are coming up. And that is really a resource that's out there and free. And
just go to the website.
Garry, do you have any other suggestions?
No, that's the best place to go.
Gencourt.gov, GENCORT.
Let me just check.
Yeah, and you can watch almost all of the committee hearings on every single bill on YouTube. You can sign up on YouTube, and YouTube will let you know when the next hearings are coming up and what they're about. And it's they keep those hearings up even after they've finished. So if you miss one, you can go back and watch it.
And there's also an opportunity to electronically submit testimony on bills too
Wow.
from that same
It's
website.
GenCourt, GenCourt, STATE.NH.US.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, so Joanne Wilhelm is asking, or saying it used to be that we read a balanced news when we got a newspaper every day. We knew more about what was happening in our town, our school board, as well as national and state. It was balanced. We remember, right? We remember when newspapers were big enough that they could cover all of these things, but they can't anymore, can they?
Oh, when I worked for the Littleton Courier about 1,000 years ago, we covered the planning board, we covered the school board, we covered the selectmen's meetings. That is gone by the by. I hope it comes back, but I don't see that happening. What the public can do is support your local newspaper, support InDepthNH.org, send letters to the editor, care by just caring about local news and
Yes,
participating. We are in several of the news outlets have expressed publicly their financial struggles. So, as a true nonprofit, of course, we'd love you to donate to InDepthNH.org, but also support your local newspaper. They're doing the best they can. I remember when I started InDepth, somebody said, "Oh, those lazy reporters, there's never anything in the newspaper anymore." It's just that there's a struggle to keep enough people working and, keep the presses rolling.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm hoping that we have a plan to give away our news stories to all of the struggling, and some aren't struggling. I just don't know of the ones who aren't struggling. But we are working on an experiment to give away our State House coverage, our investigative reporting to all of the newspapers. We think it's that big a crisis that
yes.
we've got to step up to the
For
plate.
free, you're saying, right?
For
You're
free.
gonna give it
Yes.
for free to any newspaper or radio
Well,
station that
as
wants
long
it.
as they use our format, the template that we put up online at the end of every story, so that we can then track how many people are actually reading the
Got it. Got
depth stories on other pages. But it's that big a crisis. Just like the state is having a financial crisis, New Hampshire, like many states, we have a news crisis today,
Well,
right now.
there is a shift in things that are going on today. Back to credits for a second, Paula. Are the carbon credits available to both large and smaller tracts of wood? Is there a minimum amount or a maximum amount?
I think it depends on which market you're on. There's the California registry, which probably has limits, and it's mostly a larger um, uh, woodlot. But I think there are smaller woodlots that are there's an unregulated market where people could probably put their timber stands up. But I'm not sure exactly what the acreage is. But what the state is doing right now is developing a registry
Good.
where you can go, and it's going to be required, and it's being done by the DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, where if you are registering, if you have your property in a carbon production, you need to register it so that the state can actually see and the town can see.
Okay.
And that will probably be online, they had next year.
More to
But
come on that then.
yeah, but
You'll,
there's a lot to learn about what's going on with that. And
Isn't
okay.
there some new legislation proposing to tax carbon stands as well?
yeah,
Local,
yeah. There's a bill that Berlin state rep has put in, which would allow municipalities to tax standing timber when it is enrolled in these carbon credit farms. So they first need to know who's in there, and then they can use this as a taxation.
They're going to
Whether
levy a tax on them? Okay.
standing timber. Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, we've got questions. I'm sorry, folks, to push you through all of these, but we've really got good questions here. Bert Cohen is asking, it used to be that PSNH had huge political power. What about the new version of that entity?
Gary.
Gary.
Well, Eversource, as it's known now, it's still the largest public electricity utility in the state. So it's going to have some sway, that's for sure. Its days of driving everything, I think, sort of petered out. We could see that when Northern Pass went down.
Mm,
They really wanted that in the biggest way, and they didn't get it.
good.
Uh,
Okay.
do they have the same amount of power that they used to have? Probably not, but they're still a big player. You know, they can throw a lot of weight around.
Yeah. Also, is AI going to keep education commissioner?
That's the $5,000 question.
Today, the governor was talking about that. The governor was speaking at a press conference about both the upcoming renominations of both Frank Edelblue and who's the other one? For Mella. And he was kind of sounding like AI may not do that. And he was sort of saying one of the benefits that he sees if somebody's been in a job for a long period of time, like he was noticing, that Edelblue had been in the job for 8 years, is that it's good to get somebody else in and give a new, fresh look at things. I think it might depend on whether one, he wants to do this, but two, I think she's sort of indicated to him that she wants her own thing going
Mm,
forward.
mhm. Good
And
for her.
I doubt I doubt that he's going to be. I just have this gut feeling that
Mhm.
he's trying to grease the skids or lay a groundwork that would explain why she's not going to do that. But it might be up to him whether he wants to do it or not. But it will certainly be a political battle for her. And early in her administration, she might not want to go that route or not, but we'll see. She's going to have a lot of heavy plowing to do in the next couple of months, and that's coming up really quick.
Okay, I've got three questions, and it's 6:27. So I'm going to roll through these. Catherine O'Brien, what is the role of lobbyists in the State House? Has that changed from 25 years ago? And who are the most powerful? Can we do that in 30 seconds? All right, wait a minute. No.
Loudly.
I mean, it really hasn't changed a whole lot. That's
Okay.
still the same system that's always been there. And the powerful ones are still the powerful ones. I mean, there are various entities that are Gallagher's firm is, Tom Rath's firm is,
Mm.
McLean, Merritt, and so many others. I mean, they're still around. The big powerhouses are still around.
Mm.
So the faces may change, but the power doesn't change.
What is the role?
Okay. We did get a kudos for our newsletter, and there's another question here. A shout out to some of the town newsletters, such as the Bradford Bridge, which covers their local government and town happenings thoroughly in hard copy and online. Have y'all heard of Bradford Bridge?
Mhm.
No, no. We'll have to
There's
look
a
into it.
wonderful blog by a gentleman in Northwood who puts up every week. He writes about what happens at the selectmen's meeting and what's hot in the town. And right now, I would like to see those continue, of course. That's citizens who really care about the business. But I'd like to see the news outlets be able to hire reporters again,
Right. And to that point, Joseph Michael is saying there are at least two profitable newspapers in New Hampshire, in Laconia and Conway. Why haven't others followed their business model?
Well, I'm familiar with their business model but I have no knowledge of how well they're doing financially. I really think that even the newspapers who were doing much better and had a good financial model, like those two papers, they were free newspapers and just were able to be profitable with the advertising, and I hope that's continuing. But I don't have any firsthand knowledge of how they're doing.
how they're doing it. And finally, we have Joanne Wilhelm is saying, where can we access, oh, just get another one, hang on. Where can we access the speech that Sununu delivered today?
He did not deliver a speech. He held a press conference, and he and everybody who was there was it was a large gathering. I recorded the whole thing. I'm going to be sitting down today or tomorrow and the next day to process some of the things in various categories. He talked about the Marconi situation. He talked about oh, we peppered him with a million questions. That will be probably coming out in segments in depth in the next few days, but it will also be part. New Hampshire Public Radio is there, the Union Leader was there, WMUR was there, the Concord Monitor, Amanda Goke from the Boston Globe. So everybody's going to have a little bits of it. It wasn't actually like you know, an address. It was him answering every question until we gave up the bullets. And it was the way he has done this for what I consider to be his legacy is being willing to talk. And he talked a lot about how COVID taught him to be a good governor. And communication, as he said, was what he learned about the job, that it is communication. And he, without giving us credit, he realized that these are hugely important roles that we play in allowing him to explain and understand what's happening. And I, as I said when we went to the North Country in Lancaster, people, think there's a lot, there's plenty of faults. But one thing I would say for this governor is that he has been very good to the transparency aspect and meeting with us every 2 weeks after council meetings and answering all our questions. So,
Good.
you know, it'll be interesting to see. There will be a lot that will come out in dribs and drabs, but not in one.
One combined place. Yeah. Okay, lastly, Deborah W. I am still concerned over the power of the Executive Council in New Hampshire. I just heard that Sununu has withdrawn his choice for state librarian over Executive Council concerns about the nominee's public position to book censorship. This is disturbing, very disturbing. And I think many New Hampshire residents do not understand the power of the council, and I thank you for all your good work.
Okay, that issue did come up. Well, Mindy, who I forget her last name right now, had been nominated by the governor to replace the longstanding state librarian, and had stated that she I'm not sure exactly what she said, but she basically was opposed to censorship or book banning and stuff like that. Executive Counselor Wheeler and a number of other counselors had approached the governor and said they would not support her nomination. He withdrew her name because he said the votes weren't there and he did not want to put her through any more, and she willingly agreed to that, but he took it away and left it now to the new governor to try to find a librarian who is willing to take on that job. And I think there will be a big story about that. I'm working on it. I have not, it's just been a long day. Really, the process, the immediate thing that I had to deal with was Hampstead Hospital, and that did pass today. But yes, there is a story there, and there it will continue to be a story, or we won't have a late librarian. This is because there are very, the council is 4-1 Republicans. There are several that are very, very adamant about a very conservative agenda that's parent rights focused. So we'll see what happens, and it could be interesting.
I know we're running out of time, but please read Bob Lepre's comments because Bob Lepre, we worked with him for many, many years and at the Union Leader. And I just want to give him a shout out and say hello.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
he
he
sent
said
a
you folks
nice,
are doing excellent work. We sure are, huh?
Miss you,
thank you.
Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Uh, okay, one more comment. Corinne Cascaden, Berlin Daily Sun will be charging $1 on January 8th. It no longer will be free. So that's one way to sustain. Charge something for it, especially if you're printing a paper.
Well, I know, and the Caledonian Record has already notified its readers several months ago saying that finances were really tough. Please buy a subscription. And it's an excellent newspaper in the North Country. And I hope people will do just that. But he promised no layoffs. If he has to go to 3 days a week printing, he will. If he has to close, he won't lay off. So I applaud him. We need solid, well-paying jobs for reporters.
Well said, Nancy. Gosh, this has been so good, so interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Garry Rayno. Thank you, Paula Tracy. Thank you, the great Nancy West, who, you know,
Next month, we're going to have Damian Fisher do a similar type event, and I hope you'll come. He's going to be talking about investigative reporting. Talk about holding people accountable. He's good at it.
and right to know, right? He's
Right
excellent.
to know. He gets more information through the right to know law and knows how to do it and will talk about how he is so successful at it. And he's
Okay.
great. And he's a good writer too.
So we have that to look forward to.
We ought to
Thank you
thank,
to everyone.
yes, we ought to thank everyone who's out there listening tonight.
Yes, thank you for all of
Seriously.
you, everyone that's listening and all that you folks that came to talk. So we really are grateful.
And you're the reason we even get to do our job. Thank you.
Yes. All right. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you so
Right.
much.